Evelyn Cross had built her whole life on being the one who fixed things. A supplier failed, she found another by noon. A deal collapsed, she rebuilt it before dinner. There was no problem money couldn't move, no door that stayed shut when she pushed on it hard enough. But now she was on her knees on a cold NICU floor, and the smallest person she had ever loved was slipping away from her, and there was not one thing in the world she could do about it. The baby's name was Grace. Evelyn had chosen it the night the surrogate went into labor, 4 months too early. Grace was born the size of a soda can, her skin so thin you could see the blue map of her veins underneath. 14 days now she had fought inside that plastic box, with tubes taped to a face too tiny for them, with wires running out of a chest that fluttered instead of breathed. Evelyn had a driver, a private jet, a corner office on the 40th floor. She had given all of it up in her heart the moment she saw those numbers on the monitor start to drop. She would have traded every dollar, every building, with her name on it, for one full breath from her daughter. "Come on, baby," she whispered, her forehead pressed to the warm glass of the incubator. "Come on, Mama's here. Mama's right here." The monitor beeped, uneven and cruel. She hadn't slept in her own bed since Grace was born. She wore the same navy suit until it stopped looking like clothing and started looking like grief. The nurses brought her coffee she never drank. The specialists came and went with their soft voices and their careful faces, and every day the careful faces got a little more careful, which was how she knew. Nobody said the word yet, but she felt it circling the room like cold air under a door. She reached one finger through the port in the incubator and touched her daughter's hand. 5 perfect fingers, curling weakly around her own. That grip was the only thing holding Evelyn up. "I've got you," she said. "I promise you, I've got you." Outside the glass, the hallway lights hummed. Somewhere down that corridor, a mop moved slowly across the floor, back and forth, back and forth. She didn't notice it. She noticed nothing but the small hand in hers, and the number on the screen, falling. 2 floors of that same hospital belonged to Marcus at night, and he knew them better than anyone alive. He knew which wheel on the yellow bucket squeaked, so he pushed it a certain way to keep it quiet. He knew the vending machine on the 7th floor gave you 2 bags of chips if you hit it just right, and he saved that trick for the nights he couldn't afford both dinner and bus fare. He knew every scuff on every floor, because he was the one who buffed them out. He worked from 6 at night until 4 in the morning, 5 days a week, in coveralls that never quite came clean no matter how hard he scrubbed them. People walked past him like he was part of the wall. Doctors talked over his head about their weekends, their cars, their sick patients, never once lowering their voices, because who listens to the man with the mop? Marcus listened. Marcus heard everything. He just never said a word. At home, in a 1-bedroom apartment across the river, a 7-year-old girl named Zoe was asleep with the hallway light on because she still didn't like the dark. His sister stayed with her while he worked, and every night before his shift, Marcus knelt by Zoe's bed and smoothed her hair back and told her the same thing. "Daddy's going to go make the money. You dream something good for me, okay? Tell me all about it in the morning." "Okay, Daddy." "Who loves you more than anything in this whole world?" "You do." He kept a photo of her in the chest pocket of his coveralls, right over his heart. It was creased soft from how many times he'd taken it out on a hard night, just to look at her gap-toothed smile and remember why his back hurt and his hands ached and his pride was buried somewhere he tried not to dig. There had been a different life once. He didn't let himself walk back into it. A man could go crazy living in a house that burned down, so he kept his eyes on the floor, kept his cart moving, kept the money coming, and told himself that was enough. A father who provides is a good father. That was the story he needed to be true. Tonight he was on 9, working his way down the long corridor outside the NICU, when he heard a woman crying behind the glass. He'd heard crying on this floor before. It never got easier, but you learned to keep moving. He kept moving. The mop went back and forth, and he tried very hard not to hear. Inside the glass room, the doctors had run out of road. They didn't say it that way. Doctors never do. Dr. Harold Whitmore, the lead specialist, 30 years of newborns behind him and a wall of degrees in his office, chose his words the way you'd carry something breakable across ice. "Ms. Cross," he said gently, "we've tried everything within the standard of care. The ventilator settings are as high as we dare. Her lungs are stiffening, and her oxygen keeps falling no matter what we do. Her body is simply too small, too early. I think we need to prepare you." Evelyn looked up at him from the floor. "Prepare me for what?" He didn't answer right away. That was the answer. "No," she said. "No, you're the best in the country. That's why I brought her here. That's why I paid for—" Her voice broke. She hated herself for even reaching for money, as if it had ever mattered, as if it could buy a single breath. There has to be something. Another drug, another machine, another hospital. I'll fly her anywhere. I'll fly anyone here. "Moving her would kill her tonight," Whitmore said, as kindly as such a sentence can be said. "And there's nothing at another hospital we don't have here. I'm so sorry. Sometimes there is nothing left to do but hold them." The words landed on Evelyn like a building falling. Hold them. She had held boardrooms. She had held her ground against men who wanted to break her. She had held her whole company together with her own 2 hands through a market that tried to swallow it. And now the only thing left for her to hold was her daughter while she died. A nurse touched her shoulder. Evelyn shook it off, not out of anger, but because if anyone was kind to her right now, she would shatter, and she couldn't shatter, not yet, not while Grace was still breathing even a little. "How long?" she made herself ask. "Tonight," Whitmore said quietly. "Maybe by morning. We'll keep her comfortable. We'll give you as much time as you need." Time. He was offering her hours to say goodbye to a person she had waited her whole life to say hello to. Evelyn turned back to the incubator. Grace's chest rose and fell, each breath a little shallower than the last. Her small face, half hidden by tape and tubes, looked so peaceful, so unbothered by the war being lost around her. Evelyn opened the port and slid her finger back inside and let her daughter grip it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry, baby. Mama couldn't fix it. Mama tried. Mama would give you everything." The tears came now, silent and endless, running down a face that had not cried in public in 20 years. "Please don't go. Please. You're all I ever wanted. Please stay with me." Behind the glass, the world's most powerful woman folded over her dying child, and grief filled the room until there was no air left in it. Out in the hallway, the mop stopped. Marcus hadn't meant to listen, but the door had swung open when a nurse hurried out, and for 3 seconds the sounds of that room poured into the corridor, and inside those 3 seconds was a phrase that reached into his chest and closed a fist around his heart. Stiffening lungs. Oxygen falling no matter what we do. Paradoxical breathing. He stood very still. The bucket's dirty water went flat and calm. He knew those words, not from a textbook he'd read once, from the worst and most important night of his life. Suddenly he wasn't in that hallway anymore. He was 3 years back, in a different hospital, holding a pager and wearing a white coat with his name embroidered over the pocket. Dr. Marcus Bell. He was standing over another impossibly small baby, his own, while every monitor screamed the same song this one was singing now. Zoe had been born early too. Her lungs had failed the same way, and the specialists that night had said the same careful, terrible sentence: "There's nothing more we can do." Except Marcus was one of them. Marcus was the specialist, and he had refused to accept it. He had reached back into everything he knew, past the standard playbook, into a newer, riskier protocol most of them had only read about, and he had begged the attending to let him try, and the attending had said yes, and Marcus had saved his daughter's life with his own 2 hands. 6 months later, those same hands were empty, because 6 months later, his wife, Nadia, collapsed at home with a bleed in her brain, and Marcus, who could save a stranger's baby, could not save her, and in his shattered, sleepless grief, he made an error on a chart at work, and a board that had never once lost a child looked for someone to blame and found the man too broken to defend himself. They took his license. They took his name. Grief did the rest. He had told himself he'd left all of it behind, but it wasn't behind him. It was right there, on the other side of that glass, wearing a different baby's face. The exact same fight, the exact same words, the exact same ending everyone had already agreed on. Nothing more we can do. They were wrong 3 years ago. He knew they were wrong. He had proof asleep in a bed across the river with the hall light on. Marcus's hands began to shake around the mop handle. Marcus stood in that hallway for a long time, and a war went on inside him that no one walking past could see. If he opened that door, he lost everything. Not maybe, for certain. He was an unlicensed janitor, telling doctors how to practice medicine over a dying infant. They'd throw him out. They'd fire him before sunrise. He'd never work in this building again, and word travels. He might never work anywhere again. And then what happened to Zoe? Who bought her shoes, her food, kept the light on in the hallway she was afraid of? A good father keeps his job. A good father keeps his mouth shut and his head down and his little girl fed. But there was another voice, quieter, older, the voice of the man he used to be before the world took his coat and his name. You know what's killing that baby. You know the treatment, you've done it. And if you walk away and mop this floor and go home, that mother is going to spend the rest of her life the way you spent the last 3 years, holding a photo, wishing she'd fought harder. He thought about Nadia, about what she'd say. She used to grab his face with both hands when he doubted himself and say, "Marcus Bell, God didn't put those hands on you to hold a mop." He reached into his chest pocket. He pulled out the creased photo of Zoe, her gap-toothed grin, the daughter who was alive tonight only because one time a doctor refused to stop. Somewhere behind that glass, another father wasn't in the room, but another mother was on her knees, and her baby was running out of breaths, and Marcus was the only person in the building who had beaten this exact monster before. He looked at his daughter's face. "Okay," he whispered to her, to Nadia, to himself. "Okay." He put the photo back over his heart. He let the mop fall against the wall. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Bell walked toward a dying child like the man he really was. He pushed through the NICU doors, and the room turned to look at him. For one heartbeat, nobody understood what they were seeing. A big man in filthy gray coveralls, sweat on his face, standing in the sterile heart of the unit like a smudge on a clean window. Then understanding hit, and outrage came right behind it. "Sir, you can't be in here." A nurse moved to block him. "This is a sterile unit. The baby's on high-frequency ventilation, and she's still dropping," Marcus said, his eyes going straight to the monitor. "Her SATs are in the 70s. That's not just prematurity. That's not primary lung disease." Dr. Whitmore's face went from confusion to fury in a single second. "Who is this? Who let the custodial staff into my NICU? Get him out, now." "You're treating the lungs," Marcus said, not moving. "But the problem isn't only the lungs. Look at the pattern. Look at how her chest is moving. That's paradoxical. Her pressures are climbing, and you're fighting the vent when you should be. How dare you?" Whitmore's voice cracked like a whip. "You are a janitor. You mop floors. You have no idea what those words even mean. You're parroting things you overheard through a door. Security." "I'm not parroting anything," Marcus said, and for the first time his voice dropped into something steady and low and absolutely certain, a voice none of them had ever heard from the man they never looked at. "I've seen this exact presentation before. I know what she has, and I know what stops it. You've got minutes, doctor, not hours, minutes, and you're about to let this baby die of something that has a treatment." The room froze. Somewhere a monitor beeped its cruel, uneven rhythm. And Evelyn Cross, still on her knees on the floor, lifted her head and looked at the janitor like a drowning woman looks at a rope. "How can you possibly know that?" Whitmore demanded. Marcus straightened his shoulders. The coveralls were still stained. The sweat was still on his face, but the thing that came out of him now filled the whole room. "Because my name is Marcus Bell," he said. "Dr. Marcus Bell. I was a pediatric critical care specialist for 11 years. I've published on exactly this complication. And 3 years ago, I treated it successfully in a baby smaller than this one. His voice caught, just once. My own daughter. She's 7 now. She's asleep at home. The silence that followed was total. The young nurse's hands flew to her mouth. 2 of the residents looked at each other, then at their attending, then back at the man in coveralls. Whitmore's jaw worked. That's impossible. If you were a physician. I lost my license after my wife died. Grief. A mistake on paperwork. A board that needed a name. Marcus said it plainly. No shame left to hide. Because there was no time for shame. You can look me up in 30 seconds. Or you can spend those 30 seconds saving her life. Your choice, doctor. But make it fast, because she doesn't have long. I am not handing a critical patient to a what? Marcus said quietly. Finish it. Whitmore didn't finish it. His eyes flicked to the falling number on the screen, and for the first time, doubt cracked through his certainty. But pride is a heavy thing, and it doesn't fall in one push. I won't allow it, he said. It's a liability. It's insane. I have protocols. Your protocols already gave up, Marcus said. You already told her mother to say goodbye. It was Evelyn who ended it. She rose off the floor. 14 nights of grief fell away, and the woman who ran boardrooms stood up inside her again, because her daughter was dying, and here at last was someone saying the word fight. Do it, she said. Ms. Cross, Whitmore started. I said do it. Her voice was steel wrapped around a sob. You told me there was nothing left. Nothing. So there is nothing to lose. This man says he's beaten it before. I believe him. I don't care what his shirt says. I don't care about your liability. That is my daughter, and I am her mother, and I am telling you to let him try. She turned to Marcus, and the steel cracked just enough to show the terror underneath. Please, save my baby. Please. Get me a waiver, Whitmore snapped at a resident, his voice shaking with fury and fear both. If we're doing this, she signs, and it's on record that I objected. Fine, Evelyn said. Someone shoved a clipboard at her. She signed without reading, her hand steadier than it had been in 2 weeks. Done. Marcus, tell them what to do. And Marcus Bell, janitor, widower, father, doctor, stepped up to the incubator, and something in him that had been dead for 3 years came back to life. I need racemic epinephrine, and I need surfactant redosed now, he said, and his voice had changed completely. Calm, fast, total command, a surgeon's cadence. Drop the vent rate. You're stacking breaths and fighting her. I want you to switch her to the settings I give you exactly. Nurse, I need her lines. Somebody get me current gases. Move. Nobody moved. Move, Marcus said, and this time they moved. For the next 4 minutes the room became a machine, and Marcus was its heart. He called numbers, adjusted flows, laid his rough janitor's hands on a baby the size of his palm, with a tenderness that made the young nurse start to cry. He spoke to Grace the whole time, low and steady, the way he'd once spoken to Zoe. Come on now, little one. Come on. I know it's hard. I know you're tired. Just a little more. Breathe for me. Then, for one horrifying moment, everything got worse. The oxygen number, already low, dropped like a stone. The monitor's beeping turned into a single, rising wail. She's crashing, a resident said. She's crashing. We're losing her. No, we're not, Marcus said, but his hands moved faster. This is the turn. It gets worse right before it works. Hold the line. Hold. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Whitmore stepped forward, his face gray. The number kept falling. 60, 58, 55, and every person in that room stopped breathing, along with the baby. Come on, baby girl, Marcus whispered, his own eyes wet now. Not tonight. You're not going tonight. I've got you. I've got you. Breathe. The number hung at 52. And then it moved. 55, 59, 64. The wailing alarm broke and steadied into an even beep. Grace's tiny chest, which had been fluttering and paradoxical and wrong, suddenly rose, smooth, deep, real. Then again, and again. 70, 78, 85. Oh my God. the young nurse breathed. 90. The number climbed into the safe green zone and stayed there, and Grace Cross took a full, whole, unbothered breath entirely on her own, and then another, as if she'd been doing it her entire tiny life. Nobody spoke. Nobody could. A room full of the best specialists in the country stood in absolute silence, watching a baby they had pronounced beyond saving pink up in front of their eyes. Evelyn made a sound that wasn't a word. She pressed both hands over her mouth, her whole body shaking, and she looked at her daughter breathing, just breathing, this ordinary miracle, and then she looked at the man in the dirty coveralls who had walked in from the hallway and given her back her entire world. Marcus stepped back from the incubator. His hands were trembling now that they didn't need to be steady. Tears ran openly down his face and dripped off his jaw, and he didn't wipe them away. 3 years of being invisible, 3 years of being nobody, 3 years of a mop and a bucket and a swallowed name. And underneath all of it, still, always, this. A healer, a father, a man whose hands were never meant to hold a mop. Whitmore stared at the monitor, then at Marcus. The old pride was gone from his face. What was left looked almost like shame and almost like awe. How? He managed. Marcus just looked down at the baby breathing peacefully in her plastic box. Because somebody did it for mine, he said quietly, when everyone else said stop. It took Evelyn Cross 3 days to find him again, and she used every resource she had to do it. Grace was breathing on her own now, off the high settings, growing stronger by the hour. The doctors called it a recovery none of them could fully explain. Evelyn knew exactly how to explain it. She just couldn't find the man who deserved the credit, because after that night, he had slipped away, like he always did, back into the walls, and the hospital's records listed no Dr. Marcus Bell, only a night custodian who worked for an outside contractor and kept to himself. She found him at the end of his shift, in a cramped maintenance closet on the sublevel, sitting on an overturned bucket, eating a sandwich alone under a bare bulb. The great and powerful Evelyn Cross stood in the doorway of a supply closet in a $5,000 coat, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. "You didn't come back," she said finally. "You saved her life and you just went back to mopping." Marcus set the sandwich down. "It's my job." "It's not your job." Her voice was thick. "Mopping floors is not your job. You're a doctor. You're the best doctor in that entire building, and they had you emptying their trash." He looked at his hands. "I lost my license, Miss Cross. That doesn't come back because I got lucky one night." It wasn't luck. She stepped inside, and to his shock, this immaculate woman lowered herself onto a second overturned bucket so she could look him in the eye. "I read everything. Your record, your papers, what happened with your wife, what that board did to a grieving man who had just buried the person he loved. Marcus, they didn't punish a bad doctor. They punished a broken heart, and it was wrong." His jaw tightened. He didn't trust himself to speak. "I don't want to give you money," Evelyn said. "I mean, I will, whatever you need, forever, but that's not what I came down here for. Money's easy for me. It's the only easy thing." She leaned forward. "I have a foundation. I have lawyers who eat medical boards for breakfast. I am going to get your license back. I'm going to fight it until it's done, and it will get done, because I do not lose. And when it's back, there's a children's hospital breaking ground with my name on the wing, and it needs someone to run its critical care unit. Someone who doesn't give up on the ones everyone else gives up on." Her voice cracked. "I need to know that man is in the world, Marcus, because he's the only reason my daughter is alive." Marcus Bell looked at this woman, and then past her, at nothing, at everything. "I have a little girl," he said quietly. "Zoe. She's 7. She's the reason I took the job. I couldn't be a doctor anymore, but I could still be her dad. That was the deal I made with myself." "Then let me make you a better one," Evelyn said softly. "Be both. Be her dad, and be who you are. Let her grow up watching you save children instead of watching you hide from it. That's the life your wife wanted for you, isn't it? For both of you?" The tears came then, silent, the kind a strong man cries when someone finally sees him. He thought of Nadia's hands on his face. God didn't put those hands on you to hold a mop. Yeah, he whispered. Yeah, it was. Evelyn Cross reached across a supply closet and took the hand of the janitor who saved her daughter, the way you shake hands to seal the most important deal of your life. Then, welcome back, Dr. Bell, she said. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus let himself believe it. Grace Cross came home 2 months later, pink and squalling, and perfectly, gloriously alive. And on her first birthday, at the front of a brand new children's hospital, a doctor in a clean white coat, with his name stitched over the heart, lifted his own daughter onto his shoulders so she could see, while a grateful mother watched the man the whole world had overlooked become exactly who he was always meant to be. If you felt even a piece of what Marcus carried tonight, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what town, city, or country you're reading from. I honestly love seeing how far these stories travel, and I want to send a personal hello to every single one of you out there.